So the next speaker is really special because she's really a homegrown talent. She did her, Sudeshna did her bachelor's in CMI and then went on to do her PhD in IMSC. After that, she did a couple of postdoc stints and then she joined IIT Kharagpur a few years ago. She works in geometry, and today she'll tell us about Euclidean Steiner trees and rectilinear Steiner trees and so on and so forth. So, thank you.
Thanks, Sushmita. It's great to be back in IMSC, and just like Professor Kumar was saying, this is also a problem that I started on working with Saket when I was in IMSC. Very simple statements. Let me get into the problem. So what is a Euclidean Steiner tree problem? As input, you're given a set of n points in the two-dimensional plane, which is also called the Euclidean plane. And a very natural question to ask is, what can be the minimum length of a network connecting all input points? And when I say network, you can think of it as line segments that can be used to connect these n points, the set of n points. Now, a simple observation for everybody is that if I am asking for a network and I'm also wanting to minimize the length, then I would like, it's quite obvious that you shouldn't be having a cycle over there, because I can always break a cycle and still maintain connectivity and cheapen my, the cost of the length of the network. So we expect the network, this network, the minimum length network, to be a tree, and that's where, that's where the name Steiner tree comes. This minimum length network for this problem is called a Steiner tree, the Euclidean Steiner tree. Now, just a backstory. So, for most of the time that I have known of this problem, I thought this is called a Steiner tree because it was probably the problem was introduced by Jacob Steiner. But actually, it's not true. Actually, one of my students recently told me Jacob Steiner has nothing to do with this problem. This is a misnomer. Actually, Gauss was the person who introduced the problem in this form. Even before that, in the 17th century, I think Fermat was the first person who introduced the problem. The problem was much simpler at that point, where you have 3 points in the two-dimensional space, and you want to find out what is the best way of connecting these 3 points. A very mathematical question, and I mean, I'm sure most of you can also think of applications for these questions. Okay, so, and also there are many related, many famous mathematicians related to this problem. For Fermat's problem, Torricelli was the person who solved it, and after that, I think Jarnik and one more person, I don't remember his name, they solved the cases for when n is less than equal to 5. So very small steps were taken in order to solve this problem. So in spite of all these huge names, not a lot of progress was made. I think Jarnik's result came in the first half of the 19th century, of the 20th century. Okay, so let's look at the problem itself. If I was given 2 points, it's quite clear that just connecting it with the line segment between the 2 points is the best way we can connect it under the Euclidean metric. So what happens if I have more than 2 points? One natural question is, should I just take the line segments connecting all possible pairs of points of my input, consider the weight of each edge or each line segment to be equal to the distance of that line segment, and then try and see what is the best way of connecting amongst these line segments? Is this going to be, does this at least contain an optimum solution? And for those who are familiar with graphs, this would just mean you have a complete weighted graph and you want to find a minimum spanning tree, something which we understand very well and obviously polynomial time solvable. But as it happens, that's not true. So once we go higher than 2 points, everything goes haywire. So this is what Torricelli solved, and that's why this extra point that is required is called a Torricelli point. So what he showed is, when I have three input points in such a manner that all these internal angles are more than 120 degrees, then I have, in order to get the minimum length network, I have to introduce a non-input point. So this is the mystery point that suddenly turns up, which we do not know of in the input, but we have to find out. So using geometry, Euclidean geometry, Torricelli proved that this is the best way. And this point, how do we get, what is this point? So basically on each of these edges, on each of these line segments, you draw a Euclidean, draw an equilateral triangle for each of them. Then you take the circle that circumscribes these equilateral triangles. These circles will intersect at a particular point. This is the Torricelli point. And when I connect the Torricelli point to each of these input points, that is the best network that is possible for 3 points. So again, can we think of, so we know that for 3 points, there is a solution like this. So can we decompose the input set of points into sets of 3 points and then connect them, and maybe some more connections between input set of points? Because this point is no longer a mystery. We know how to find this. But even that's not true. So as soon as we go to 4 points, then there may be more than one mystery points, which are not input points. So again, this was shown by Jarnik and I think his name is Kostler, Jarnik and Kostler, where you have to introduce at least 2 Steiner points. These red points are, these mystery points are what I will be calling Steiner points. You have to introduce at least 2 Steiner points to get to the best network, the minimum length network connecting 4 points. Okay, so, so again, these are Steiner trees, and there is one more, I mean, you can have some more constraints on Steiner trees, which are also called full Steiner trees. Let me explain the difference between the two. So in Steiner trees, it is possible that some of the input points are also internal points of the tree that I'm trying to connect. So, but I may also require, I may have as constraints in my question that I want all the input points to be leaves of this network. I don't want any of the input points to be internal points of this network. And so on the same set of points, you will have 2 different solutions, minimum solutions for the 2 different problems. But one thing to notice about what is the relation between Steiner trees and full Steiner trees, you have a unique decomposition of a Steiner tree into full Steiner subtrees. So for example, if you look at this, there is, if you look at this, the lower diagram, then you have an extra Steiner point, and if you just break at all the internal input points that were used for the connections, then you will have much smaller subtrees where all the input points are still leaves of those trees. Okay, so how are these useful? The Steiner trees, full Steiner trees and full Steiner decompositions. Here comes the next properties which will clarify this. So the Steiner points have certain properties. These were proven as the years went by. So the first thing was that each Steiner point can have degree exactly 3. And the angle between consecutive edges at the Steiner point is exactly 120 degrees. Okay, so once I have the fact that each Steiner point can be of degree exactly 3, then I know that these Steiner points, if I look at a tree as a graph, if I look at the tree as a graph, then I have all these n points that are given as input, and these unknown points I know are of, can be at most n in number. So, why do I know that they are at most n minus 1 in number? Because they are of degree at least 3. So if I do some simple graph theory and try to see how many vertices of degree at least 3 can be in a graph where the number of leaves is at most n, then I find out that the number of Steiner points can be at most n minus 1 if n is the number of input points. Similarly, if I look at full Steiner tree, then the number of Steiner points will be exactly n minus 1. So now that I know this, Now I use a few more combinatorial tools, and I know that I can, if I just look at the topologies, the possible topologies, some of the vertices in these trees will be the input points, will correspond to the input points, and the others will be these variable points which I'm calling Steiner points. If I look at the topologies, the number of topologies is again bounded by a large value, maybe some f of n value, which is exponential. But one possible algorithmic scheme for this could be that I list out all the possible Steiner topologies, and then for each such topology, I try to get a realization on the Euclidean plane. So I have certain, I have the positions of the input points, and I try to realize how can I place these variable points such that that forms a realization of this topology or the tree, the abstract tree that I have. And another route is you look at a Steiner topology, you know that each Steiner topology has a unique decomposition into full Steiner topologies. So you look at all possible full Steiner subtopologies. Instead of looking at all possible Steiner topologies, which will be much larger in number, you look at all possible full Steiner topologies, full Steiner subtopologies, try to realize each such subtopology, and then try to put them together to form a Steiner tree, a minimum Steiner tree for the set of input points. So even this is not that great because the number of full Steiner topologies on an n point input can be as much as 2 to the n log n. So let's come to the known results for the Euclidean Steiner tree problem. So it's a very hard problem. It's NP hard even when the input points are in convex position. So this was shown by Rubinstein et al. That even when you put the points in convex position, you can think of it if the points are something similar to a regular polygon. I'll come to what convex position is later on, but this is a much simpler version of just having n points given to you, and even then it is NP hard. There is some ray of hope because of Melzak's algorithm, which says that if you give me a full Steiner topology, then in linear time I will be able to find a best realization for that topology. But even when I use Melzak's topology as a subroutine, I get killed by the number of full Steiner topologies there can be, the possible combinations of these decompositions, and I end up with, so far the best known running time for the general case is 2 to the order n log n, which is still much worse than even a single exponential algorithm like 2 to the n. Okay, but there are some polynomial cases as well, very few, but still there are. So if my points are appearing as corners of a regular polygon, suppose my input points were such that they are corners of a regular polygon, then this problem is well solved. So up to n equal to 5, there will be some disparities, but after that, from n equal to 6, n greater than equal to 6, basically Coquin showed that a spanning tree, so if I just consider the regular polygon as my graph, a spanning tree is equal to a Steiner tree. Also, if you, let's look at another case, you take the input points to be corners of the regular polygon, but you also take the center of that regular polygon as part of your input. So your input points are corners as well as the center. So again, up to 5, there will be some disparities, and then actually up to n equal to 13, there are some, you have to do some case analysis, and after n equal to 13, there is a specific pattern in which these Steiner trees will appear. Obviously not the same as spanning trees, but this is all well solved. So then with two of my students, they are actually BTech students, but they were very interested in computational geometry. So we wanted to ask the following 2 questions related to previous results. So what if we could get better algorithms for NP-hard cases? So we put more constraints on our problems, on our inputs, and we see whether we can improve the running time. So suppose I give you n input points that are in convex position, what I was referring to earlier. So which means that if you take any two, if you, you look at a convex region, the minimum convex region that contains all the input points, if you look at the interior region of this minimum convex region, there will be no input points. All the input points lie on the boundary of this region. So that's what I mean by the input points being in convex position. So given n input points that are in convex position, the question is, can we get a single exponential algorithm now with this added constraint on the inputs? And on the polynomial side, it's natural, since we already have some results for regular polygons and regular polygons with centers, it's natural to ask what happens if I have two regular concentric n-gons, and let's say one, the inner n-gon has length 1, side length 1, and the outer one has side length lambda. So what happens, is this polynomial time solvable? Maybe we will have to assume something on lambda. And this is what we got. Actually, for the hard cases, we saw that we did a little bit better. So you give me n input points such that, so you look at the convex region, that the minimum convex region that encloses these n input points, and at most small o of n many points. By small o of n, you can think of this to be log n points or root n points, something like this. So at most small o of n many points lie in the interior of this region. Okay, so you have most of the points lying on the boundary of this region, only a few, like some function of points. This function will be tending to 0, so this function by n will be tending to 0 as n grows larger. This is what I mean by small o of n. So much fewer points lie in the interior of this region. So when this happens, then a minimum Steiner tree can be obtained in 2 to the order n time. So we get a single exponential algorithm. And for the polynomial cases, it's a little bit, there are a few more words to be explained. So look at this lambda. So the first assumption that we have is, let the ratio between the smaller polygon and the side lengths of the smaller polygon and the larger polygon be lambda. So if you refer to the previous diagram, you can just think of the smaller polygon having length 1 and the larger polygon having side length lambda. So if lambda is greater than this fraction, then for n at least 13, so n greater than 12, this case is solvable, and this is the schematic diagram of the solution. And of course, what happens when n is less than or equal to 12? This is some constant case, so we'll assume that it is polynomial. Now, what is this? So this is very technical, and we spent a lot of time to find out how to show that a particular solution is.
Check. Hello. Check. Hello. Check. Hello.
Okay. So it took some time to prove how this is the best Steiner tree that is possible for this for this configuration. So let's look at what this. Let's call the right hand side to be lambda 1. Let's look at what lambda 1 looks like for as n grows. So what we saw is this lambda 1 for 13 is quite large, the ratio between the inner polygon and the outer polygon. But as we grow, as n grows, then it tends quickly towards 1. So which means that as n grows, most cases of the ratio between the outer edge and the inner edge almost becomes equal to 1. So most cases will give you a solution which looks exactly like this. Okay, so now I come to, am I doing for
Camera
time?
operators ready, yeah?
Okay. Okay, so now I come to the second part, which is rectilinear Steiner trees. So I assumed in the first part of the talk for Euclidean Steiner trees, I assumed that the distance metric is Euclidean metric, which means if I look at 2 points, let's say x1, y1 and x2, y2 are the coordinates of these 2 points, then the distance between them will just be x1 minus x2 square plus y1 minus y2 whole square root over the whole thing. So now we can also ask the same question but change the metric that we are working with. So the rectilinear metric is just the distance will be measured as x1 minus x2, absolute value of x1 minus x2 plus absolute value of y1 minus y2. So this is also known as the taxi cab distance or the Manhattan distance and so on. So again, we are in the rectilinear Steiner tree problem, we are given n points as input and the objective is to find a minimum network connecting these n points. But now the minimization of the length will be according to the new distance metric, which is the taxi cab distance or the Manhattan distance. And another variant that is interesting for rectilinear Steiner tree is when you are given, let's say, an infinite integral grid, and the input points all come from, all appear on the integral grid, and you also have to restrict your solution to the integral grid. So this variant of the problem is actually interesting for the VLSI community. I will explain why. So in the VLSI community, when we are in the step of physical design of the integral chip, then already certain components have been placed. So these are fixed, these positions are fixed already. Mostly they will be some rectangular shapes, and on these shapes there will be certain active points called pins, and these pins will have to be connected to, a set of pins will have to be connected amongst each other with the objective of having to send a common signal to each other. And there might be more than one set of such pins. So now if I, in an integrated chip, we know that you cannot have a path like this. You have to have it in a certain way. So the fabrication is such that you have to follow integral paths in order to do this routing. So now automatically this, if I just look at one such set, we can think of the pins as vertices on the integral grid, and I mean correcting this in the cheapest way possible is the objective, because we want to minimize the wire lengths. So this becomes the rectilinear Steiner tree problem, but where we are restricted to the integral grid. Okay, and most of the problems related to this, the easiest version is the rectilinear Steiner minimum tree. Most of the problems related to this are all hard, NP-hard problems. So just for the rectilinear Steiner minimum tree, Hanan first gave a discretization of this problem where, so this is what the Hanan grid is. You have n points, so this is irrespective of whether you have an integral grid or not. Let's just talk of n points which are on the Euclidean plane. If you're given n points, now you pass a vertical line through each of the input points and a horizontal line through each of the input points, and look at the grid that is created by these vertical and horizontal lines. You just look at the segments look at the smallest bounding grid that contains all these points. So these blue line segments are the ones that define the Hanan grid, and notice that if I have n points, input points, then I have at most n horizontal line segments and at most n vertical line segments in the Hanan grid. So this is much more sparse than, even if I looked at the integral grid, this is much more sparse than the whole grid itself. So this is called Hanan grid, which Hanan came up with in 1966. And an immediate algorithmic result from this is an application of the Dreyfus-Wagner algorithm, which gives a 2 to the order n time algorithm for this problem. So basically, you can think of this as a graph now, And Dreyfus-Wagner solves the Steiner tree problem in a graph. So we automatically get this. But the point is that we are not utilizing the geometry of this problem. This is not any graph. This is a very sparse grid graph. So then what we came up with is 2 to the order root n log n time algorithm. So notice that root n log n will always be much smaller than n. So we came, so this is what we call a sub-exponential algorithm, which is, so this this root n log n is doing much better than n, so that's why we call it a sub-exponential algorithm. And this problem has a sub-exponential time algorithm. Okay, so now let's look at the problem that we considered recently. Again, let me remind you of the objective of looking at this, this problem on the integral grid. We basically want to connect some constantly many sets of active circuit points. So these are the sets of circuit points that we want to connect. And so now the question becomes, instead of trying to find one rectilinear Steiner minimum tree, what if we had constantly many rectilinear Steiner minimal trees, a family P1 to Pc of sets of points with a total of n points. So let's say I require n1 points to be connected inside P1, n2 points to be connected inside P2, and so on. And immediately we notice that this need not be the solution need not be restricted to the Hannan grid. So why is that so? Because it is not possible, it's not a good idea to have these trees to be to have a common edge. The solution trees must be edge disjoint, because it's not necessary that they will be passing the same signal. So if I have one edge being used by two trees, there has to be some time sharing. You cannot pass a 0 signal and a 1 signal at the same time. So they have to be edge disjoint. And here is an example where the Hannan properties are violated. So I have all these points for one set which are along the along one diagonal, and no matter how you select, no matter how you try to connect these points, you will be using at least one edge from each of the rows, which will not allow you to connect these 2 points on the opposite diagonal inside the Hannan grid without using a common edge. Okay. So then the main question to be asked over here is, what is how can we discretize this problem? Can we find something similar to, I mean, I shouldn't use the word discretize, how can we restrict, how can we find a sparse grid that is similar to Hannan? So in Hannan grid, if we had n points, we were using something like n horizontal lines and n vertical lines. How can we find a sparse grid like that, or can we find a sparse grid like that contains an optimum solution for this problem? And in fact, with 2 students of ISI Kolkata, we were able to get something called an extended Hannan grid. I won't go into the details of, I won't go into the exact definition of the extended Hannan grid, but basically what we were able to show is that if you look at the Hannan grid, so you're basically extending, the solid blue lines will be the Hannan grid, and near these line segments, you will be able to select some constantly many line segments. So for every horizontal line segment, you will be able to select constantly many horizontal line segments above and below the Hannan grid line. And for vertical line segments, similarly, some constantly many line segments to the left and right of these Hannan grid lines. And so with some Cn many horizontal line segments and Cn many vertical line segments, you should be, it is possible to show that there exists an optimum solution to the C concurrent RSMT problem. So again, we convert this problem into a graphic problem, into a sparse graphic problem, and immediately if we apply the Dreyfus-Wagner algorithm, then it gives us a 2 to the order n time algorithm. So, and in future steps, the first thing is to see whether we can extend the number of cases where we can do better, where we can get single exponential algorithms for Euclidean Steiner tree. Also identifying more polynomial time solvable cases for Euclidean Steiner tree. For concurrent RSMTs, we would like to look for sub-exponential algorithms. So the tools that are used for finding a sub-exponential type algorithm for RSMTs does not exactly carry through for the same aim when we are looking at concurrent RSMT. So we have to find some new tools for that. We don't even know whether sub-exponential algorithms exist, but we haven't really explored it yet. And there are two other very interesting VLSI problems that are also generalizations of rectilinear Steiner tree. The first one being crosstalk. So when you have two networks where you don't want them to have a lot of interaction because they may be sending two different kinds of signals, you also don't want to you don't want any part, you don't want two parallel grid lines to have wiring of the two different networks for a long time. Because if that happens, then there is a chance that some error is introduced in at least one of the networks. So finding optimal solutions when you also have this extra constraint of not having long parallel opposing grid lines in your optimal solution. And the second one is the concurrent RSMTs with stitch line constraints. So in VLSI design, the way the fabrication is done nowadays, you will have multiple lithograph beams drawing these integral grid lines, and it is possible that two parallel beams start writing on the same grid line. So which creates some errors in the fabrication of this particular line, which means you cannot do a proper wiring using this grid line. So in graphic terms, in our terms, it means that we will have certain constraints of not using some of the integral grid lines and then solving for an optimal solution which avoids such grid lines, such defective grid lines. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudeshna. So as a token of our appreciation, we'd like to give you a memento.